In 2001, Elon Musk wanted to send a greenhouse to Mars called the Mars Oasis. He went to Russia to buy a cheap rocket to launch the greenhouse, but the rockets there were too expensive. On the flight home, he thought about starting his own rocket company that would build inexpensive rockets to achieve his goal. On May 6, 2002, Elon founded Space Exploration Technologies, better known as SpaceX. SpaceX's first rocket, the Falcon 1, had its first flight on March 24, 2006. The Falcon 1 was a small, two-stage rocket designed to launch small satellites into orbit. The first three Falcon 1 flights failed, all getting closer to orbit than the last. SpaceX had one more shot at getting into orbit. If it succeeded, they would be the first company to reach orbit. If the launch failed, they would go bankrupt. On September 28, 2008, Falcon 1 Flight 4 lifted off from Amalek Island in the Pacific Ocean. The flight went according to plan, and SpaceX became the first company to ever reach orbit.
Nico?
Stage separation confirmed.
SpaceX had plans for another, larger rocket called the Falcon 5. This rocket would be able to carry much larger satellites into orbit. However, SpaceX went with the Falcon 9 instead. The Falcon 9 first flew on June 4, 2010, and is now the most flown rocket in the U.S. SpaceX was hired by NASA to fly cargo to and from the space station on their New Dragon spacecraft. In May 2012, Dragon became the first private vehicle to dock at the International Space Station. To make spaceflight cheaper, SpaceX wanted to reuse the first stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. They had tried to land them with parachutes on the first few Falcon 9 flights, but the rockets disintegrated when they hit the atmosphere. They decided to try and land the rockets using their main engines, something many people thought was impossible. To land the rockets, they added some legs to land them on, some fins for steering, and some small steering rockets called cold gas thrusters. It took many attempts to land a Falcon 9, but on December 21, 2015, a Falcon 9 landed for the first time during the launch of the Orbcomm 2 satellite.
Landing legs should be deploying in about 10 seconds or so. That is a view from the landing pad.
That is that first stage coming
down.
back down to land at Cape Canaveral. History in the making, guys.
Stage 1 is landed. LZ-1, the Falcon is landed. Landing operators moving to procedure 11.100, section 3 on LZ-1 VNet and recovery net.
Repeat, the Falcon has landed.
Since then, SpaceX has landed 50 more rockets, both on land and out on a boat on the ocean. SpaceX also developed the Falcon Heavy, the world's most powerful rocket currently flying, which first flew in 2018. The Falcon Heavy, which is pretty much 3 Falcon 9s strapped together, can launch a large payload into orbit and land all 3 of its boosters. Since the last flight of the space shuttle in 2011, American astronauts have had to ride on the Russian Soyuz rocket to get to the space station, which has increasingly become more expensive. In 2014, NASA gave SpaceX a contract to return astronauts to the space station on their new Crew Dragon spacecraft. The Crew Dragon had its first unmanned flight in March 2019. SpaceX is targeting May 27th, 2 weeks from now, to launch American astronauts on American rockets from American soil for the first time in 9 years. SpaceX's ultimate goal is to make life multiplanetary and send people to Mars. To do this, they are building a giant rocket called the Starship. The Starship will be fully reusable and is already being tested at the Boca Chica test facility in Texas. It will also take people back to the moon. Against all odds, SpaceX became one of the most reliable launch providers in the world and continues to do the impossible.